this has been a turning point in my life. This was one of the most important things that happened in my life. And unfortunately, it wasn't a good thing at all because I had the opportunity here to explain to my wife why this was a very good thing for her. That when I was submitted to God,
Yeah.
what God demanded of me was to give my life to her. And that would be actually a
Yeah.
good, powerful way for me to be able to be a good husband for her. But instead, um, I just was scared she was going to leave because she was threatening to going
Mm.
back to Denmark and that she would break off the whole thing. And so I just said whatever it took to kind of placate her and to make her calm down. And so I basically said to her,
Yeah.
like, "Oh, all this religion stuff, you don't have to worry about it so much. It's mainly just while I'm here in South Africa. Probably things won't be so serious. Don't worry too much about it, kind of thing, and don't take it too seriously."
Wow. Okay.
Hi, Dad. Welcome for chat number
Hey.
11, Father and Son Talks.
Wow. Can you believe it? Very good, Paul.
Yeah, we're well into double digits now. So
Yeah.
going well. And Dad, I actually suggested that seeing as we're already into our second decade of talks or second, yeah, whatever, going into the teens, that this time I suggested that you just take control of the meeting, and you weren't so enthusiastic about that. So I said, well, how about I just like hand you the reins and like jump into the back, and then we'll see how it goes. Or at least maybe you have a question or two that you wouldn't mind asking instead of me always setting the agenda of what we're talking about in here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, so it's something that's intrigued me, and that I find as I'm talking to younger men today, and particularly, those who are coming from a very world background and a world view, is okay. So, how did you get from going to where you were a believing Christian to then becoming a declared atheist? What were the steps? What were the things that kind of drew you, influenced you? I don't know, brought you to come to these conclusions? Because
Mhm.
I don't think it happened, you know, just bang one day. There were
Mhm.
things that developed because when you were with us in South Africa, you seemed to be very much engaged and involved. And then the return to Denmark seemed to have changed something. So did something change before you left? Did something happen? What was it that started you on this road of,
Yeah.
can I use the word maybe, of doubt and of investigation and of then, I don't know what term to use, that eventually got you to take the step.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I can answer from like kind of two separate perspectives, and the perspective I won't spend so much time on is, I guess, the cultural question, because I think there are things that have led to, it's a fairly new thing that men or people are becoming atheists these days. It never existed for all of human history. Pretty much everyone's believed in some kind of higher power. But for our time, it seems like it's a short time. It seems like the tide is turning on it again, actually. But specifically for my generation, there was this movement called New Atheism, led by these guys like Richard Dawkins, and I think one can find the roots of that very much in all of the mainstream culture that I, was consuming, and my schooling that I was going in, the science fiction books that I was reading, especially I think I was reading Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov, and I've reread some of those books as an adult, and it's just pure propaganda for atheism. A lot of it is really centered around that. I remember sometimes mom would go shopping and then we'd just stop off at the little local news agent called CNA in South Africa, and we'd be reading these books, and it would just be degrading stuff that was just fully available, open there for everybody to take, and we'd be standing there and like, almost a little bit, disgusted or overwhelmed or something, but like fascinated by it. So we'd be reading that stuff while mom was shopping. I don't think she would ever dream that what kind of stuff was in that shop there. And very much of our schooling as well was really coming directly from the kind of progressive liberal agenda of looking the world through a very materialist, individualist lens. So seeing human beings as, the individual as the central turning point of the universe, which is really a very childish perspective, I would say today. And everything that you could see with your own eyes and measure physically as being like the most important things, and spiritual things utterly degraded. Our religion, Christianity classes in school, that was just a break. That was a place where you didn't have to do anything. It was irrelevant.
So did you find that things were being like poo-pooed, or were they being intellectually argued as being irrelevant? We have a superior knowledge or something. Because the interesting thing, someone said to me the other day, that at school they were told fairy stories, and it was lovely to listen to these fairy stories, and then they were told Bible stories. and in this person's mind, the fairy stories and the Bible stories were just the same.
Hmm.
There was no real distinction.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, great that at least it's the same because I think in many places their Bible studies are treated as lower than the fairy stories, right?
Wow.
Certainly, I've met a lot of men who are less receptive to that. I would say things were just disregarded as unimportant. Christianity, religion, spiritual matters, that was not seen especially in my school. Nobody really saw that as interesting or relevant.
Oh.
Yeah.
And again, sorry to ask this, but now, what would you encourage today for parents to be more aware of? Because we were kind of blissfully unaware of what was
Mm.
happening. And I think we made the assumption that schooling was still happening along the same lines as that we had when we were at school. Because
Hmm.
certainly when we were at school, you know, that was serious stuff. It wasn't something to be neglected at all.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the first thing to do is to actually become aware of how all of us are really caught up in materialist thinking. And, me, myself, I'm often more worried about my bank account balance than about, the quality of the relationship and my attention with my children. And so we're
Mm.
just very much trained to think about like the material state of things and to be quite unaware and are distracted using screens and emailing and whatever about the quality of our relationships, our spiritual bank account balance with other people and with God. And so I
Mm.
think that's the place to start really. And then once one has that, then you need to be really involved in your kids. I have small kids. I have an 18-year-old who's gone through the schooling system and very much picked up and been formed by the schooling system. And so when I talk to him
Mm.
today, the only thing that I can hope is that the way I live my life might have some kind of impact of him. The love that I show him, as you've spoken about on previous episodes, I can trust that
Yeah.
sowed seeds in his heart, and that he can become more interested in where that love comes from one day. But influencing him on a kind of like worldview, kind of understanding cosmology and anthropology. What is a human being? What is the world? Like my chance to influence that is very much gone by now. And with my small kids, I
Yeah.
think it's going to be about really being involved and trying to gain the mind, the understanding of the apostles, of the church fathers, of the people who, like, when, of the early church, how did they understand what a human being is and why are human beings here? And
Mm.
then trying to relate that to our modern understanding, because not everything from modern science is bad whatsoever. Of course, there's a lot of good
No,
stuff in
no.
there,
Mm.
but we need to be very careful because a lot of it is actually built on the assumption of the non-existence of God. A lot of science assumes, takes as its starting point, we have to find materialistic explanations for all phenomena, and therefore God is excluded. And so what happens is that science then kind of encroaches on trying to find the meaning of life or something like that, which obviously a lot of people are trying to do. And that's where things go haywire or go adrift. And so we need to help our children to navigate through that as well.
And that's not easy because, from my understanding, the way the early scientists approached things, they said, "Oh, God put things nicely in order. Let's discover. Let's investigate. Let's find out about it because he's put things there that work together. And if we can let's see how that thing functions because it's based on the fact that there's order.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I
Whereas
mean, yeah.
whereas today, that thought of there being an intrinsic order is just tossed out completely. I think
Mhm.
it was somebody once said we cannot allow a divine foot in the door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's absolute the issue. But certainly I swallowed the idea that everything was just happening by coincidence, almost by
Mm.
chance, all just a product of
Mm.
evolution, and that leads us down a path which ultimately leads to nihilism. It ultimately leads to complete nihilism and emptiness. But hedonism is normally the first response to that. Just like, okay, well, do whatever you feel like then, because nothing really matters.
Nothing matters.
But I think I'd like to go back to your question, Dad, because I don't want to make it just about all the cultural things, but about my personal story as well. I
Hmm.
will mention as well that certainly my you know getting onto the internet and discovering pornography on the internet was a big influence on that at a kind of very deep personal level as well, and especially in my relationships to women, because a big battle for me in my childhood and all the way up through then my adult years has been my relationship with sexuality. And the way I see it is that, it's a very powerful force that is ignited in a young man when he reaches puberty. And if you then expose that young man to pornography, it's going to distort the direction that that energy is channeled into. And so, yeah, as you know, I met a young woman when I was out traveling and brought her back to South Africa, and brought her to church and introduced her to our way of life. And she also considered herself to be a Christian. And at that stage, I was also still a Christian. And then one day, one day I brought her to church, and one of my friends, Alex Booth, stood up, and he spoke about how, in the Christian understanding, a man should put God first in his life and never have any woman, certainly not, not even his wife or his family, higher in his priorities than God. And my Danish wife, who had a very, kind of thin, sketchy understanding of Christianity, got offended by this and felt like, oh no, this can't be good. And she left the church in tears because she felt like, oh no, I can't have a man who doesn't have me as his highest priority. And my response to this, and for me, I've realized later on, this has been a turning point in my life. This was one of the most important things that happened in my life. And unfortunately, it wasn't a good thing at all, because I had the opportunity here to explain to my wife why this was a very good thing for her, that when I was submitted to God, what God demanded of me was to give my life to her. And that would be actually a good, powerful way for me to be able to be a good husband for her. But instead, I just was scared she was going to leave because she was threatening to going back to Denmark and that she would break off the whole thing. And so I just said whatever it took to kind of placate her and to make her calm down. And so I basically said to her, all this religion stuff, you don't have to worry about it so much. It's mainly just while I'm here in South Africa. Probably things won't be so serious. Don't worry too much about it, kind of thing. And don't take it too seriously.
Wow. Okay.
Thanks for watching. In this episode, I've shared a couple of things in my life that I've made mistakes and sometimes wish that I could go back and do again from the beginning. And at the end of this month and every single month going forward, we're going to be running something called a Genesis workshop, which is going to be an opportunity for you to go back to first principles and to formulate some daily habits that you'd like to be doing in your life to get a fresh start. If that sounds like something you'd like to sign up for, it costs 17 euros, that's about $20 US, then we have spaces available. Check out the link in the description below. Thanks. And I really see that this as a result of me being sexually involved with this woman before I had made a commitment to her as well. And so I was, hooked in somehow to that relationship and not able to explain things to her clearly in a positive way. And so that did get her to calm down.
So in a sense, you did have the tools and the means to be able to do it, but because of the relationship, you were afraid of that breaking up.
I think it would have required me, I'm not sure I could have given her that explanation straight off the bat right there, but, I had these things explained to me. I'd heard them and I knew them, maybe not by heart, maybe not fully integrated into my understanding, but they weren't alien to me whatsoever. And if I had just said to her, hey, let's just think about this a little bit, just step back a little bit and, maybe had a conversation with an older guy or something like that, spoken to my friend about it, tried to understand it better myself, then I'm sure I could have done it. And I think if I'd just been more calm and had a more balanced relationship with her, I wouldn't have been so eager to try and please
the situation.
Yeah, so I would have had more wisdom in that situation.
Yeah,
I think so.
Understand. Okay.
Yeah. So and then I think when I moved to Denmark, then I was really just completely into a fully secular materialistic culture, which is not completely atheistic explicitly, but really I think even though most Danes are are members of the Danish state church, there's no practice of that faith, and the worldview is very, very secular in general as well. And so I remember very clearly on a summer day sitting out on a kind of roof balcony and telling my atheistic sister-in-law that we were staying with when I first moved to Denmark, probably about a year or two after I moved to Denmark, that I was an atheist myself, that I decided that I was an atheist. And I remember feeling as if I was kind of breaking something and I was a little scared doing it. But there was also this kind of feeling of liberation and putting off a restraint, similar, I would compare it today to, like, a 4-year-old like grabbing the cookies that he knows he's not allowed to eat and just stuffing himself with them. Because
And then getting sick afterwards.
Yeah, well, the sickness took time. The sickness definitely took time. It first came out as anger, because I then turned into the angry atheist that would go around arguing with people and telling them why religion was the source of all evil and stuff like that, right? So maybe the tantrum or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there was a declaration, if you like, to a private individual. Did that then become more public? And I would imagine that was quite a few months or years before you spoke to us.
Yeah. So it took quite some time. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I think, probably some months later, I said it to friends and other people around me through discussions that came out. Probably some of them that was already starting, some of the anger coming out. And then I remember saying to my wife, to Sina, like that, oh, I couldn't tell this to my parents because it would be too painful for them. So I need to kind of protect them from it somehow. And then I think probably a year and a half after that or something like that, I remember talking to her again and saying to her, like, oh, I really noticed that this is causing an even greater gulf and disconnection between me and my parents. And so it's probably better that I tell them, even though it's going to be painful for them. And so I did that, yeah. And I think it was the right thing to do, absolutely. Saying it to you guys, I think that might have been the place where things started turning a little bit in the right direction again, although there would be some time before that really happened, right?
Yeah. And it certainly was. It was the most destructive thing that we'd ever heard in our lives.
Mm.
Or for you to actually make that statement.
Mhm.
We could see that things weren't, your spiritual position wasn't what it used to be. It wasn't strong.
Mhm.
Those little things, you get the warning signs, if you like. But sure, for you to come out and make that statement was the most devastating thing for us.
You didn't
But
show
yeah, I
it.
do
You didn't
remember
show it,
us,
Dad. I remember
didn't
telling
we?
you and
Sure.
and feeling like, oh, they took that well. That was my perception back then. Is that it seemed like you
Yeah,
guys didn't get offended or upset or angry in any way whatsoever. You didn't try and argue with me. You just seemed like you
no,
just accepted it.
yeah. So yeah, there's a big difference, I think, between us being devastated and us
Mhm.
wanting to then, argue the point. So no, we did, but what we did say is, no matter what, we love you and we're going to stand with you.
Yeah,
And
I
that
remember
seems to have
that.
won the day. At
I
the end of the
remember
day, here we
that.
are.
Yeah, praise
Very
God.
good.
Praise God.
Yeah,
Well,
lovely.
good, Dad. I think, yeah,
Uh,
that was a good use of the time. So, yeah, thanks very much. Maybe we can continue the story a bit from there at some point or something like that.
yeah, and just to chat more about how we can share that with now other young men. So
Mhm.
we'll talk about that maybe next time.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah.
very, very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye now.